Hello, all you sinners, and a big happy Pride Month to all you sodomites. Unfortunately, we don't have a new episode this week. I ended up having jury duty for the first time. We'll be back with the thrilling continuation of the Book of Judges in 2 weeks, but until then, I thought I'd re-release what I think is one of our best episodes. It covered the death of Jesus, but it also was the first episode we did after Roe v. Wade was overturned. It was almost a year ago, and since then, pretty much everything that pro-reproductive rights advocates warned us would happen if Roe was overturned has happened. 13 states have completely outlawed abortion access, and several others have placed severe restrictions on it. Right now, there are a group of women in Texas who are suing the state because they were forced to carry pregnancies dangerous to their health. Jewish women are suing states because blocking abortion access infringes on their religious freedom. The Satanic Temple also started up tsthealth.org, which is an online health clinic for people who are in states with restrictive laws to help make sure they can perform their religious abortion ritual. And of course, these Christian fascists haven't stopped there. Now they're using what power they have to bully transgender kids and their families, and apparently drag queens are the real threat to our children, even though the leading cause of death in children in the US is guns. I'm thankful that here in Michigan, we voted to guarantee reproductive rights in the state constitution, and we're not banning books or transgender healthcare, and we've expanded voter access. Just saying, if you're looking for a state to jump ship to, we're almost as nice as the Canadians. Anyway, if you're not already registered, go to votesaveamerica.com and click Be a Voter. That will walk you through voter registration for wherever you live. With that, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoy the show, and we'll talk to you again in a couple weeks. Welcome, all you sinners and sodomites, to episode 27 of Bible Stories for Atheists. I'm Josh.
And I am now your possession. I'm sorry, I'm Linz.
And we are your guides to the gloriously gory stories, literally, littering the Bible. Been holding on to that one for a long time for this episode. Mm-hmm. Why did I hold on to it? Because we are covering the crucifixion, and we are covering a lot more than that too. We're talking about recent events. It's a long episode, folks. You're going to need to strap in and strap on for it.
You're definitely going to need a strap on for it.
Yeah, definitely going to need.
You're going to get fucked in the ass.
Yeah. Fucked in the ass with the truth. It's a roller coaster of emotions.
It really is.
That you're getting into with this episode, but it's a good one. Strap in and strap on for episode 27. You're a good man, Pontius Pilate. Checking the levels.
Oh, that is too loud.
Checking the levels.
That's too loud.
Okay, I'll turn your headphones down.
When you get loud, that is too loud.
Checking the levels. Still too loud?
It's fine. I just hope you don't talk like that the whole time.
You don't like that?
No.
Checking the levels.
It's weird.
That's going to be the whole podcast.
Oh.
Welcome to Checking the Levels with Josh and Linz.
Not Linz. Not Linz. Linz is leaving.
Speaking of which, my levels are too high. So I think we need to address the rotting, dead elephant in the room. And yes, that's an analogy for the GOP. Since the last time we recorded, Roe was overturned.
Yes, it was. The day after my birthday. Happy birthday to me and my uterus.
Right.
Which now has to be forced to hold a child if ever one gets in there somehow.
Again. Yeah.
Again. Well, yeah, the first one, he's fine. He's safe.
Yeah. You haven't ruled out aborting him.
No. Daily.
Yeah.
So it's fucked up.
Yeah.
It's fucked up. Like, I spent the whole day after my birthday just crying about how horrible it is that after, I don't know, 50 or so years of being able to have those freedoms, and then watching for like the past 10 years, states trying to whittle those away, and then finally being able to, like, legally, is real fucked up. It's real fucked up. And I blame lots of religious people. I blame religious people because the whole reason that people are anti-choice is they think that, like, life starts at conception, and the idea of life for them being like there's a soul in this cluster of cells that are being removed from a woman's uterus. And it's real fucked up that that's the whole reason why now, if for some reason a girl gets pregnant and she didn't want to, because listen, man, birth control fails all the fucking time. Women get raped all the fucking time. It's crazy that now, like, the idea is, oh yeah, you have to have the baby. You can give it up for adoption. It's fine. You don't have to keep it.
Yeah.
We just want you to give birth to it.
Right. You just have to keep it for the next 9 months.
Yeah, and you have to pay for it. Like, you have to pay for it. We're not going to give you the health care that you need to take care of it while you're pregnant. Like, it's expensive to have a baby. And, like, in one breath, people who are anti-choice are like, sanctity of life, must give birth to the baby. But, like, I don't know how many of these people I've also been like, oh, people on welfare are drained to the system. People on Medicare, people on Medicaid are drained to our country's resources. You want to add more children to that? What the fuck's wrong with you?
Millions of more children are going to be born
it's
to
crazy.
Families that didn't want them.
And there's been studies done that show that the economy got better after Roe was put into place. There's less crime, even though there's lots of people out there who would like to lead us to believe that crime is at like an all-time high. It's actually not. And part of that is there were tons of children who weren't born into families that didn't want them. I mean, being raised in a family that doesn't want you or being put in the foster care system will fuck you up. And you're more likely to be on drugs, more likely to end up in jail, more likely to drop out of school, more likely not to go to college, more likely to be a burden, and I'm using air quotes, a burden on society. I was having a discussion with my mother the other day, and she used one of my least favorite arguments for somebody who's like pro-choice. I'm all for women being able to get abortions, except. And then she used except. And I'm like, oh, great. What is this except going to be? And it was the women who use it as birth control.
Right.
Like, let's be honest, people. First of all, abortions are not cheap. I mean, you can get resources to help you, but you got to do work. Abortion clinics aren't just giving out free abortions. That's not a thing. So there's not women out there who are using abortions as birth control.
And part of that is, in a lot of this country, even before Roe got overturned, you still would have to travel a long way to get an abortion. And
it's not good to the body. Like, it's not something that you do and then the next day you feel good. So the idea that women are running around getting abortions as a form of birth control,
all willy-nilly,
it's just like such a fucked up idea. Even if women were doing it, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter to anybody. Like, if a baby isn't born and you felt that baby had a soul, then fine. Sit at home and feel that fucking way. But you don't get to tell me one way or the other whether I get to do it. I'm sorry. Apparently now you do, which is insane. And where does it end? Where does it end? Alabama's already trying to use it to say that they won't allow gender affirming care for trans kids because they believe it's an abuse. But where is it going to end? What if men all of a sudden can't get vasectomies because of, that's a form of birth control. The Catholic Church is against all birth control. I
think, if I remember correctly, Clarence Thomas talked about getting rid of birth control.
He wants to look at all of the decisions that the Supreme Court has made in the past that were based on the 14th Amendment.
Right.
Right. And that includes contraception, the right to contraception. That includes the rights to gay marriage. Very conveniently, though, he left out the Loving decision, which would affect him directly.
Right.
So that one he managed to leave off his docket of things that he wants to explore. And that's fucked up to me. Like, if you are a Supreme Court judge, you don't get to pick and choose that loving isn't part of your agenda just because you're married to a crazy ass white woman who tried to overthrow the government on January 6th.
You said where do they draw the line
right.
in this? And you also mentioned Alabama. Alabama did draw a line.
Oh, yeah, in vitro fertilization. So Alabama was one of those states that had a trigger law in place, which means that these states were prepping for Roe v. Wade to be overturned so that when that happened, they would have laws already in place. And first of all, the fucking gender traitor of a governor that they have totally talked about God being part of it when she signed it. And I'm like, we already know that there's not an actual separation of church and state.
Yeah.
But
despite what the First Amendment says,
right.
which is that there should be, paraphrasing, that the government can't lift up any religion over another, can't promote any religion,
right,
or therefore persecute any religion.
Yeah, except their governor, Kay Ivey, when she signed it, said that the legislation stands as a powerful testament to Alabamians' deeply held belief that every life is precious and that every life is a sacred gift from God. Except if you're somebody trying to get pregnant through in vitro fertilization, because anybody who's not aware, when you are trying to get pregnant through in vitro fertilization, they fertilize a shit ton of eggs. And then they implant some and then they hope that they stick and the rest of them get destroyed. But that's okay.
So these are viable fetuses.
They are viable fetuses, but that's okay because Republican state senator in Alabama, Clyde Chambliss, whoever the fuck, this dude, said that eggs in labs don't apply. It's not a woman. There's not a woman who's pregnant. So what?
So is it the fetus or is it the fact
that a woman's pregnant?
That a woman's pregnant.
Yeah. He also went on to say, when asked if the law would allow abortions for victims of incest, and he says, yes, it would allow for abortion of victims of incest up until the point she knows she's pregnant. Fucking what? What woman has an abortion without knowing that she's pregnant? It's the whole reason you get an abortion is because you know that you're pregnant. So if you're in Alabama and you're a victim of incest, just go get an abortion.
Find out later if you were pregnant.
Yeah, just go get your uterus sucked out and then find out later whether there was a fetus in it, is what he's saying, basically. It really just drives home the idea that, like, this isn't about the sanctity of life. This isn't about birth or a baby's life. It's literally about controlling a woman's body and what she decides she wants to do with it. It's one of the places where men don't have full control, right? I mean, there are so many arguments out there that are like, well, what if the man wants to have the baby? Fucking fine. He can go figure out how to have a baby on his own. Yeah. I mean, you just never know. There's plenty of dudes out there who are like, yeah, I want to be a dad. And then fucking it gets hard and they take off.
That was a big thing that changed my mind on this issue. Like, I was already pretty much pro-choice, but I was like one of those people who was like, I'm pro-choice, but pro-life for myself type of
right. Like
thing.
If you ever got a girl pregnant, you wouldn't want her to get an abortion.
Right. But what got me to the point of adamantly being pro-choice was when that happened to a friend of mine where she got pregnant from some guy that was also a friend of ours. And he was adamantly about like keeping it and everything. And then as soon as she got past this point where she said like, all right, at that point, I'm not going to terminate it. Mm-hmm. As soon as she got past that, he disappeared on her.
Yeah.
You know, now in that instance, it worked out. He ended up coming back and everything, but you know, she was fucking terrified.
Sure.
And all the guys in my group was on his side.
Except for you.
Whole thing, except for me. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, like
it's insane.
And I really like that totally changed my perspective on what women have to go through.
Because men have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
They say they want a baby. That's great. Yeah. You later can make the choice that you don't want to. Women can't at all anymore. Getting real emotional.
I know. You and I were talking about this offline since Roe got overturned and hearing a lot of women talk about this. I've never thought of it as a consent issue. And it really is a matter of consent in that way, where it's like men have the ability to have sex and not consent to having a child.
Right.
Yeah, women need to also have that ability.
Exactly.
They need to be able to say,
no, thank you.
I am not agreeing to having a child.
Right.
Be able to have sex and say, I am not going to have a child. Yeah.
And like a lot of people's answer to that is, well, you can just give it up for adoption.
Right.
But that means I have to be pregnant and give birth. I have to be pregnant for 9 months, which I have to pay for. And then I have to give birth, which I also have to pay for.
And even if you didn't, like the emotional toll of it.
Dude, listen, I love my child a lot. He could have been an abortion, but I decided not to get one.
Right. You consented.
I consented to keeping him and having him. And I hated I never wanted to be pregnant in the first place. And after having him, there's no fucking way in the world I would ever want to be pregnant again. It's terrible. These women who are out there who are like, I loved being pregnant, are insane. They're insane. It's insanity.
Or at least their brains are wired differently than yours.
No, they're insane, Josh. Pregnancy sucks. They're insane. Or they've forgotten how terrible it was because they love having the child, which is fine. Like, I also love having my child, but I also remember how much it sucked being pregnant.
Yeah.
If you're in a situation where a dude's like, I don't want you to have an abortion, I want to keep this baby, like there needs to be something in place that a woman can do legally to say like, okay, from this moment, we're going to sign all of these legal documents. From this moment on, you're 100% fiscally responsible for everything. My medical care, baby's medical care, everything. And like, this baby is yours. When it comes out of me, like it's yours. Like I'm not responsible for paying for anything, blah, 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 blah. And if it turns out that you're a terrible dad, like I also have the right to come in and be like, well, you fucked this up real bad and we're going to take this baby away from you because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Because these men, they don't know. And most women, when they get pregnant and have babies, don't know what it's going to be like. And certainly I feel like men don't know because they're never taught to be caregivers when they're young.
No.
Right? They're not taught how to nurture a child and like all of that stuff. So it's especially difficult. So I think that's what happens is men are faced with that hardship because it is hard raising a human being. It's a very hard thing to do. And then they get into it and they're like, fuck, this is hard. I don't want to do it anymore. Other than giving a baby up for adoption, women don't really have that option. And even then, they still have to go through the whole start of it. And
you don't know who's going to end up with the baby. You don't know if they're going to end up in the
foster care system, which, listen, there's a lot of great foster care providers out there, but there's also a lot of bad ones. And there's a lot of kids who have come out as adults who have come out of the foster care system and talked about how terrible their experience was, how they were molested. You know, they were constantly in trouble at school. They didn't have a solid life. They don't have nothing to set them up for the future. There's a lot of kids who could just get kicked out of the foster care system when they're 18 and then have to figure out life. At that point, it's completely ridiculous to me that everyone thinks the answer is like, well, adoption, because there's tons of babies out there who aren't being adopted every day. One of the things I read, which I thought was pretty powerful after this whole fucked up thing happened, is this woman who works at a nursing home was having discussion with women who were in the nursing home. So these are women who are like in their 70s, 80s, 90s, people who remember the pre-Roe v. Wade time. And here are some of the things that these women said about being pregnant before abortion was legal. I kept telling my husband 6 kids was enough. After a while, I just started throwing them in the river because her fucking husband wouldn't get off of her. And they were probably Catholic, didn't believe in birth control. I mean, and that's a circumstance where she is married and has kids and is being forced to keep having children by her husband. I knew it was my father's, so I just left it in a hole in the outhouse. I mean, the trauma that goes along with that whole sentence. I just shoved dirt in its mouth and left it in the woods. Like,
I remember when you first read this to me, you were saying how this is what women do.
Yeah.
When they don't have
if they don't die.
Yeah. If they don't have the choice, if they don't have a legal, safe way to go about doing this. So this is what they're signing up for when they leave this to the States, and even right now are talking about, they're talking about doing a nationwide ban if Republicans get back in control of the Senate and the House and the White House. And they could do it. That's something that could happen in our country.
Right. So instead of providing safe legal abortions, women are going to die because they're going to get those fucking back alley abortions, or they're going to have to actually murder their own babies.
Right.
Which is way more fucked up.
Yeah.
And this is what Christians want. It's so upsetting, obviously. And at the end of the day, like, in my heart of hearts, I know that this whole sanctity of life thing is bullshit. Because I have to pay to go to the doctors, right? There are homeless people everywhere. Children aren't being taken care of. Your fucking religions abuse children every day. So, sanctity of life argument is completely ridiculous. Because if you were worried about life, you'd be taking care of all life. Not just forcing women to have babies.
So yeah, I'm pissed about this as somebody who was raised a Christian, and I had one idea of what it meant to be a Christian growing up, and it doesn't seem like that is what it means today. You know, with the Roe decision, there's the decision allowing prayer in school, which is going to be used. It's going to be used to pressure kids of different faiths or no faith to pretend to be a Christian in order to not get oppressed by other people in their school, by other kids. They're also talking about overturning same-sex marriage protections. And I feel like we need to address this. So I'm going to make a call. Are you there, God? It's me, Josh.
Thank you for calling God. Your call is important to us. All operators are currently helping other customers. If you would like a call back instead of holding, please press 1.
Press 1 where? There's no number pad.
Or say 1.
1.
I'm
sorry.
We didn't get that.
1.
Fantastic. You are number
526,352,604.
in line. Approximate wait time is
1 hour.
Thank you for using
God.
Goodbye.
Okay, I guess we'll need to just wait to have our grievances addressed.
He's a busy guy.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of fetuses he's got to go put souls in now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other aspect of this is how many babies does God abort?
Oh, a lot.
A lot more than humans
Right.
do.
Right.
How many fucking miscarriages happen without a woman even knowing she was pregnant?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
God creating a soul and then killing it.
Right. Do those women get to write off that baby on their taxes, though?
I don't know.
No, they don't.
Not yet.
The answer to that is no.
Yeah.
They also don't get time to grieve. They don't get time off work
No.
to grieve or anything like that.
No.
So, but, sanctity of life.
Right. First off, you asked about why it's called the Passion.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
And I did some looking into it. I
Okay.
thought it was going to be a straightforward, because Jesus was passionate.
I like how you thought it was going to be a straightforward answer.
Yeah.
That was silly on your part.
But it turns out, luckily, a little while back, there was a notorious anti-Semite who made a movie about the Passion story. I can't remember what it was called, but some articles were written back then about where the Passion gets its name.
Okay.
And so this is from slate.com in 2004, which I didn't even realize Slate was around that long ago. There's an article called Why Is It Called the Passion by Sam Schechner, I think is his name. And here's an excerpt from that. The English word has its roots in the Latin passio, which means simply suffering. Its first recorded use is in early Latin translations of the Bible that appeared in the 2nd century AD and that described the death of Jesus. The Latin word was borrowed prolifically in the Old English religious texts, where its meaning remained exclusively theological. But when the Normans invaded Britain, which I think is interesting, I think it's just a bunch of guys named Norman running around invading Britain. Hello, I'm Norman. Hello,
That's not
hello,
who the
I'm Norman.
That's not who the Normans
No,
were.
that's what I'm picturing. It's just a bunch of guys named Norman
No.
walking into Britain. Oh, fucking Normans are here. Hello. So anyway, when the Normans invaded Britain in the middle of the 11th century, their conquest infused thousands of French words, including passion, which also referred solely to the sufferings of Jesus, into the spoken language. Okay, so it incorporated all these words into the spoken language. And by the 13th century, passion was being used to refer to any strong emotion.
Right.
The process accelerated greatly as the English vocabulary exploded in the 16th century. Over the course of the century, the word came to signify a panoply of emotional afflictions.
I'm sorry, Panoply?
A panoply. Yeah, this guy really loved. This guy was really
He's
doing
very,
the article
yeah.
up. Yeah. This word came to signify a panoply of emotional afflictions such as extreme anger, a literary work marked as deep emotion, and finally a strong sexual attraction or love. This is really interesting to me. The first sexual usage is attributed to William Shakespeare.
Oh, Shakespeare.
Yeah, who wrote in Titus Andronicus, "My sword shall plead my passions for Lavinia's love."
Okay.
It wasn't a great leap from Shakespeare to the entirely modern sense of passion, which developed with his and others' help over the next few decades. So what's interesting to me about this is not that like how they came to name this whole story of
Right.
Jesus, the passion. It's how it kind of started off that way and what the meaning of passion is evolved from that.
Right. I just don't know why it wasn't changed once passion entered
Took on
its modernity. I mean, if you're trying to convey what happened and your old timey word isn't conveying it well anymore, then maybe it's time to update. But listen, we all know how good the Bible is at updating and how good all religions in general are at updating their language to fit modern times.
Right. Yeah.
So it's interesting that it like legitimately 100% was specifically meant to be the suffering of Jesus. Like that's its original actual meaning was very specifically theological. And then those stupid Normans.
Yeah, those Normans.
They're from
Hello.
Normans are Italian.
I'm Norman.
They're Italian. Normans are Italian.
I'm a Norman.
They're from they're French. I'm sorry, they're French, maybe French or Italian.
I'm Norman. I can't do a French accent.
They're
Probably shouldn't do a French accent.
Well, I mean, I think it's fine to do whatever accent you want to do.
Okay.
Normans are from the area of Normandy.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. So, like, everybody named Norman is from Normandy?
No,
Oh, okay.
no.
We're going to talk about the fate of Judas, which is the only way I can think of to
Judas gets
say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me guess.
Okay.
Judas gets hung, right?
I mean, that's your guess. Do you want me to just outright tell you, or do you want me
I guess
to tell
not.
you the story?
I guess let's tell me the story.
Okay.
And then he becomes the first vampire.
Yeah. Yeah, that's in the Bible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just in a movie. What was the movie again?
Dracula 2000.
Dracula 2000, yeah. Matthew 27, 1 through 10, it says, "Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans on how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. 'I have sinned,' he said, 'for I have betrayed innocent blood.'" What a queen. What a fucking drama queen.
What the fuck did he think was going to happen?
I don't know.
Like, he's been following Jesus around this whole time. He knows that they threaten to kill him like every other day.
Yeah.
So he thought turning Jesus over to the people who have threatened to kill him, what, he was just going to give him a bubble bath or something?
Yeah, bubble bath. That's what he was hoping for after that kiss.
Yeah. He's just going to spend some time in jail? Like,
Right.
what the fuck?
Yeah. So then they said...
Idiot. Listen, we've gone back and forth on like the intelligence level of the disciples and how Jesus goes from being like allowing them to be stupid and then being mean to them about being stupid all the time. And like, there are times where I'm like, well, maybe it's just the way they're written. No, absolutely not. And this proves it. Judas is a fucking moron. What an idiot.
Yeah. So he's talking to the priests. What is that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself.
Oh.
The chief priests picked up the coins and said, it's against the law to put this into the treasury since it is blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. Quote, they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me, unquote. All right. So now the footnote references 3 verses, none of which actually say the line that was provided there. And those are Zechariah 11, chapter 11, verses 12 and 13, Jeremiah 19, 1 through 13, and Jeremiah 32, 6 through 9, in case you feel like looking those up. But we're getting almost to the end of the Gospels, and there's a lot of prophecies throughout the Gospel, quote unquote prophecies throughout the Gospels. And I want to just call this out. I can't remember which biblical scholar said this, but prophecies back then might not have had the same meaning that they have today. Like today, when you think of a prophecy, you think of something, predicting the future.
Right.
Right. You're predicting this is something that's going to happen. Back then, it may have meant that a prophecy was just simply lending credibility to new scriptures by referencing old scriptures, right? And who knows? I don't know. But what I do know is I have yet to see any prophecy in these Gospels that actually is a prophecy about Jesus.
Right.
Like I haven't looked up every single one, but I've looked up the vast majority as we went through the Gospels to look at the original scriptures that each of these prophecies were based on. And none of them were talking about God coming in the flesh to forgive everybody their sins. They were talking about messiahs, quote unquote, where it was like, a warrior king was coming to save them from the Babylonians or the Assyrians, or it was like a reference to Moses or something like that. Like it was never actually meant to even be a prophecy in a lot of cases. I don't know if I quite buy that prophecy didn't mean that back then, but either way, none of these prophecies are actually prophecies.
It's really easy to write a prophecy when things have already happened.
Yeah.
Too.
And even if that was the case, they're right. If they're just making this story up, then they can make it fit whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
They didn't even do that very well, is my point. Anyway, so that's Matthew's version, but there's another version of what happens to Judas.
The Book of Wes Craven.
So this actually is not in the Gospels.
Oh, this is the Book of Wes Craven.
This is from the Book of Acts.
Okay.
So this is Acts chapter 1, verses 18 and 19. Acts is actually a continuation of the book of Luke. And it's worth pointing out that these 2 verses that I'm going to read are literally a parenthetical in the story. It says, with the payment he received for his wickedness, Judas bought a field. There he fell headlong. His body burst open, and all of his intestines spilled out. Everyone in Jerusalem heard about this, so they called that field in their language Akeldama, that is, field of blood. With that, we want to give our regular reminder to our listeners that God is perfect. Therefore, the message to the world in the form of the Bible is perfect. And there are no contradictions whatsoever in the Bible. So there you go.
So either a man realistically hung himself.
Yeah.
And then because of some weird law, they couldn't use the money to put in the coffer. So they bought a field to put dead people.
I have heard Christians, I'm not fucking kidding you, say, well, he hung himself, but he didn't do a good job of it. And then he fell and spilled, cut open his belly or something.
You said, I'm sorry, he exploded.
Yeah.
Is that what it says? What does it say?
It said he fell headlong. His body burst open.
Yeah.
And all of his intestines spilled out.
But that's not, but in nowhere in there does it say that he had hung himself.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So
they try and combine the two.
So everyone who's trying to combine them, let's be clear.
Yeah.
Like if you try and hang yourself and you fail and you fall, the thing that's going to happen is not that your stomach bursts open.
Right. Yeah. Well, there were rocks.
That made his stomach burst open.
I'm not fucking kidding. I don't remember though, like how they deal with the fact that it specifically says with the payment he received, he bought a field.
Right, which is what he said he was going to do.
Yeah, which, well...
In that thing that we had...
When we recovered the audio, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
It
the
seemed
very real
keen
audio.
on the field.
Yeah.
I mean, more realistically would be like he tried to hang himself and it did work. Yeah. And then the birds ate him and strewn his intestines everywhere.
And as we already know, the birds are Satan.
Right. Yes. A popular third theory is that he dies and then becomes Dracula.
Yeah. The first vampire.
The first vampire.
Yeah.
I still think the idea of him being remorseful about what he did is fucking ridiculous.
I know. That's why I think Luke's version is better.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, all right. Then he didn't feel bad. He just bought a field.
And then his stomach exploded.
Yeah. And he just fell down.
Yep.
Fell down very badly.
Yeah.
Apparently.
He tripped and fell and his stomach exploded.
Yeah. So Jesus before Pilate. This is Mark 15, 1 through 15, Luke 23, 1 through 25, Matthew 27, 11 through 26, and John 18, 28 through 40. Mark's version goes like this. It's early in the morning, and the Sanhedrin, which was basically like the Jewish Senate at the time, the Sanhedrin take Jesus to Pilate, the Roman governor over Jerusalem. Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus says. The priests are accusing Jesus of a bunch of stuff. Pilate asks, "Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they are accusing you of." Jesus doesn't reply, and this amazes Pilate. And then verse 6, we get, "Now it was the custom at the festival to release a prisoner whom the people requested." There's a man named Barabbas in prison.
Barabbas. That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, like you've probably heard of him before, and I bet by the end of the story you'll remember why.
Okay.
There's a man named Barabbas in prison for insurrection and murder. The crowd asks Pilate to release him. "Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate, knowing it was out of self-interest that the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. "What shall I do then with the one you call the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked them. "Crucify him," they shouted. "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him!" Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. So that's Mark's version. Luke's version, they take him to Pilate. It says, "We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Messiah, a king." Pilate asks Jesus if he is the king of the Jews. Jesus, of course, responds, "You have said so." Then Pilate announces to the priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man," which seems a little quick to pass that judgment. Just that's all he needed.
I mean, if he was a just and fair judge, then that's all hearsay.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Right. Like literally everything up to now, they have been saying that everybody loved Jesus.
Right.
Except for the priests and the elders and stuff, the Sanhedrin
they got them worked up. They got the people worked up. It's a mob mentality.
But then everybody just decides to come out here and be a dick to them. Yeah.
Mob mentality for sure. Also, both of these stories so far, and I imagine the other ones are similar, but I guess you'll cover that. Pontius Pilate doesn't seem like a bad guy.
No, he doesn't seem like a bad guy, does he? No. So anyway, it goes on to say, but they insisted he stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here. On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he heard that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at the time. So a quick recap on Herod. If you remember from the Nativity episode, Herod in Matthew's version of the Nativity tries to go after baby Jesus.
Right.
That was Herod the Great, who would have theoretically been the Jewish king of the area during that time when Jesus would have been born. Go back to the Nativity episode, though, if you haven't listened to it. We break down like why we actually don't know when Jesus would have been born. Like there's a big discrepancy between the two gospels that talk about it. But anyway, this would be Herod's kid, Herod Antipas, who we're talking about here. And in Luke's version, which was the one we're reading, Herod never goes after Jesus during the nativity story. So
right, okay.
So it's an important
thing. So there's
thing.
not a precedent there that Herod hates Jesus.
Right, exactly. And that's important when we cover.
And this covers again, Pilate being like, well, that's not my jurisdiction. Like he really is kind of just shown as like a dude of the law.
Right.
Here,
yeah.
Where he's like, there's no.
He's just doing what he has to do.
There's no reason why I can see that you guys want to do this. He's Galilean. He shouldn't even be under my jurisdiction.
Yeah. If I don't have to kill him, I don't want to.
Right.
When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform a sign of some sort. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies. And I feel like there's a story I've heard behind that, and I can't remember what it is, but there's a lot of stuff to cover, so I didn't get into it, but it's a weird little thing that they throw in there. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish him and then release him." But the whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man! Release Barabbas to us!" Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" For the third time he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him punished and then release him." But with loud shouts, they incessantly demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. So there's no mention in this about a custom with releasing the prisoner.
Right.
Right.
They just asked it and then he did it. And they also asked him to kill Jesus and he did it. Even though he was straight up like, there's no reason to.
It's so fucked up when you actually think about this, how it's like, here's an innocent guy to kill. Give us the murderer.
Right.
Who, he was an insurrectionist, so he killed Romans.
Right.
He killed Roman soldiers.
Yeah.
And Pilate's just like, all right, I
guess you want him. Here you go. That's and it's funny because what you can tie throughout the years from that story to like modern day conservatism and Christianity is those people who talk about cancel culture and how the court of public opinion has, crucified them, basically. Because there are a lot of people out there who end up getting canceled for a reason. And it's all based on the court of public opinion, which I don't 100% necessarily agree with. Although I do think calling out people
to some extent, it's important. Just fucking free market capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah. But then you get the people, Gina Carino is one of them, right? Who is very like she feels like she's being persecuted and likens her struggles to that of people in the Holocaust and stuff like that, and you can kind of tie like that scenario where Christians can be like, well, what happened to Jesus?
Yeah.
Right. He, under the rule of law, was found innocent, or not innocent, but not worthy of death.
Right.
But yet the people incited this to happen.
The mob.
Yeah, the mob asked for it. And for some reason, the dude that was there to uphold the law was like, all right, I guess if the people want it, we'll put on a fucking show for the people.
Right.
Which is weird. But yeah,
it's just kowtowing to the masses.
Yeah. It's wild stuff, man.
So John's version, as always, John does his own thing. And it's really interesting to me, the dialogue difference in this.
Yeah.
Okay. So John's version goes like this. Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanliness, they did not enter the palace because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man? If he were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you," they said. Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." "We have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about what kind of death he was going to die. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" This is weird dialogue shift. "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into this world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me." "What is truth?" retorted Pilate, which is the only time I think in the Gospels we have seen an actual rhetorical question. It's an interesting little thing here that, like, literally this is the only time where somebody just rhetorically asks a question to be cheeky.
Right.
"What is truth?" retorted Pilate. With that, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him, but it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now Barabbas had taken part in an uprising. So a little bit different with the dialogue there, but kind of the same story.
I feel like the inflection you're giving the Pilate coming out and being like, "Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?"
Yeah.
I feel like it would be more like, "Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?"
It literally is in quotes.
Yeah.
It literally
Especially since he just came off that retort of like, what is truth? Very Roman. What is truth?
Yeah.
"Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?"
Right. Yeah, it's just funny that you could, because it literally is in quotes there. This story has always bugged me since I was a kid.
This particular part of the story?
Yeah, because what the fuck is going on with Barabbas?
Okay.
What the fuck is going on with this guy? Right? It makes you wonder also, what the fuck is going on with Pontius Pilate just releasing a prisoner every year?
Right.
Is this something that Roman governors actually do? Right. So I did some looking into it. And Dr. Bart Ehrman, who we've talked about several times, he's a biblical scholar, has a blog. And he actually posted about this in April 30, 2022. And it's titled, "Pilate Released Barabbas." Really?
Mm-hmm.
And this is ermanblog.org. And I'll read a couple of excerpts from this because it's really good. It's a really good post. "What evidence is there that Pilate ever released a prisoner to the Jewish crowd because they wanted him to do so, or because he wanted to behave kindly toward them during their festival? Apart from the Gospels, there is none at all. In part, that is because we do not have a huge number of sources for the governorship of Pilate over Judea. Just some highly negative remarks in the writings of a Jewish intellectual of the day, Philo of Alexandria, and a couple stories in the writings of the Jewish historian Josephus." Okay, so we don't have a ton of writings about him, but we do have some, right? These are enough, though, to show the basic character of Pilate, his attitude to the Jews that he ruled, and his basic approach to Jewish sensitivities. The short story is that he was a brutal, ruthless ruler with no concerns at all for what the people he governed thought about him or his policies. He was violent, mean-spirited, and hard-headed. He used his soldiers as thugs to beat the people into submission, and he ruled Judea with an iron fist. Dr. Ehrman also later says, I should point out that we don't have any evidence of any Roman governor anywhere in any of the provinces having any such policy. And just as a reminder, in Luke's version, it was not a regular occurrence. Right. There was no mention of him doing this every Passover. Ehrman raises a good point, though, about why is it that this story appears then in every one of the Gospels? Like, if it's in all four of the Gospels, it's probably really important, right? He suggests that it's a distorted memory, that the early church uses the story to place blame for Jesus' death at the feet of the Jews and not on the Roman governor.
Right.
Pilate is made to look like an innocent in the proceedings.
Yeah, he seems real chill.
Yeah. And he's just doing...
Maybe a little snarky, but chill. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. But he's just doing what the Jewish people want.
Right.
And where is the Catholic Church based?
Yeah.
It gets even fucking weirder.
Okay.
In Aramaic, this is again from Dr. Ehrman's blog. In Aramaic, the language of Palestine, the name Barabbas literally means son of the father.
Okay.
And so, in a very poignant way, the story of the release of Barabbas is a story about which kind of son of the father the Jewish people preferred. Do they prefer one who is a political insurgent who believed that the solution to Israel's problems was a violent overthrow of the ruling authorities? Or do they prefer the loving son of the father who was willing to give his life for others? In these Christian recollections, the Jewish people preferred the murdering insurrectionist to the self-sacrificing savior. So to be clear, Dr. Ehrman is saying that the writers of the Gospels used this fictional character, Barabbas, as a literary device to show that the savage Jews wanted a murderous insurrectionist over the gentle, self-sacrificing Jesus. And if you doubt his theory, then you just need to read Matthew's version.
Okay.
So this is what Matthew's version says. Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony that they are bringing against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, there was a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed over Jesus to him. When Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him a message. "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." It's really weird that they had texting back then.
I know, right? I was like, did she text him?
I know. Like now when you read that, like the only thing you can think of is him like pulling out his phone.
Like, don't you fucking dare do anything with that Jesus the Messiah, dude. I had some crazy ass dreams because of him.
She's dreaming about him.
He does have those.
He does have those I don't eat
those
abs.
I don't eat abs. And his dick, he does have that big dick energy.
Dick is hanging out of the cloth a little bit. Oh, I hope you listened to the last episode. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and have Jesus executed. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" the governor asked. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they all shouted the louder, "Crucify him!" When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I am innocent of this man's blood, he said. It is your responsibility. All the people answered, his blood is on us and on our children.
Oh my God.
I know.
What?
All the people.
All the
people
people.
shouted that all together. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. People fucking believe this happened.
Right.
People believe this happened.
Yeah.
And the whole thing I mentioned about Barabbas meaning the son of the Father, that's not news to these people.
Right.
They know this. I found, Christian videos about this story where they talk about that.
Right.
Now, they don't talk about the Roman side of it. They don't talk about why is it that Pilate was painted to be such a saint in all this.
Right.
Or at least neutral
Yeah.
in all this. But they talk about the fact that this is meant to signify that Jewish people wanted to have the murderous insurrectionist instead of, the true Messiah.
Right.
Right. So this is where all that fucking anti-Semitism, well, it's not the only place, but this is where a lot of anti-Semitism comes from.
Right. Right.
In Christian circles. And these are the people who are setting our fucking laws.
Yeah.
So that's the fucking crazy story
It
of
is.
Barabbas.
It's very crazy. The whole idea, and listen, we all know how easy it is to incite a riot.
As we've seen.
So it's not outside the realm of possibility that when you get if you get a couple angry people going, or if you have somebody feeding people's anger, you can't, but I mean, come on.
Right. Turns out Barabbas was also secretly raising money from these people and using it for his own purposes.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. The whole idea of it is, and the most unbelievable thing in all of those stories is the kind of how well Pontius Pilate is portrayed.
Yeah. Because
historically, as you said, the amount of people that were killed while the Romans were kind of in control of that area wasn't a high number. So it wasn't warfare numbers.
Right.
But they weren't nice.
No. No.
They mean, there's
nor welcomed.
Right. There's no way Pontius Pilate was just yeah, man, whatever you guys want to do, let's do it.
Right. Yeah.
There's just no way.
Yeah, sure. I'll release this guy that killed a bunch of Romans to you.
Yeah.
It's just free and clear.
Why is that guy still alive?
Yeah.
There's just no way that he would have even still been alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
If he had killed a bunch of Romans trying to start an insurrection, they would have killed him.
Right.
They would have crucified him already, because that's what you do to display that you shouldn't do that stuff, is you kill people publicly.
Yeah. So next story.
Okay.
Is what I just called the beating.
The beating?
The beating. Jesus gets a whooping, not to make light of it, but fuck you. You guys overturned Roe. So so Jesus got a whooping. Mark 15, 16 through 20.
While he's carrying the crucifix? Because he gets beat a lot of times.
They portray him getting beat more than he actually does in the Gospels.
Okay.
But we're going to kind of go through all of that. All the stations of the Passion.
Right.
Or stations of the cross. I can't remember.
I don't remember, but it was also always in the Catholic church I went to growing up, the windows always portrayed like that. So literally you would see in different, one window was Jesus carrying the cross and being whipped.
Right.
Right. And stuff like that. And it went on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
It is the Stations of the Cross, I think.
It's the cross,
but
right?
I think so.
So we're covering all that stuff. So this is Mark 15, 16 through 20, Matthew 27, chapter 27, verses 27 through 31, and John 19, 1 through 16. Mark and Matthew's versions from here for pretty much the rest of the episode are very similar. So we're just going to cover them together and just note the differences. So soldiers take Jesus from Pilate and they put a purple robe on him, or scarlet robe in Matthew's version. And they twist together a crown of thorns and put it on his head.
Yep.
They put a staff in his hands and they mocked him by kneeling in front of him and saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." Then they spit on him and beat him over the head with the staff. Finally, they took off the robe and put his clothes back on him for some reason. We'll actually find a reason. they actually do give a reason later, but it's just a weird, like, and then they put his clothes back on.
Yeah.
Him, you know?
Well, they were insecure about the size of his penis.
Probably. That's it. Yeah. He had that Liam Neeson dick.
Yeah.
John's version of this, of course, this is a more cinematic one. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they slapped him in the face. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered there, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and the officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify! Crucify!" But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him." The Jewish leaders insisted, "We have a law, and according to that law, he must die because he proclaimed to be the Son of God. So then, yeah, you take him and crucify him.
Right.
What's the problem?"
Right.
But they don't address that, of
Right.
course.
Because he doesn't need to hold up their law, Pontius
Right.
Pilate. But also, like, if the Roman soldiers were the ones that put the crown of thorns on his head and
Yeah.
slapped him in the face.
Yeah.
So that part of the story doesn't align with Pontius Pilate being like, I don't think that this dude has anything worth killing him for.
Right.
But then also he let his soldiers put a crown of thorns on him and slap him.
He's letting them beat him.
Right.
And everything, but he's trying not to actually kill him.
All right.
The face you just made was really fucking hilarious.
It's the face when my brain shuts down and I'm
It's like you had a stupidity orgasm. It's like the best way I can think of to describe that. It's like, all right.
At some point, you just gotta give up.
Yeah. And he says he claimed to be the Son of God. When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back to inside his palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Do you realize that I have the power to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." Which bugs the shit out of me, because wouldn't that be true of the person who handed him over also?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, if he gets a pass because he wouldn't have power except from God,
Right.
you know, wouldn't that be true of the person who also handed him over to him?
If you believe that God is the one that orchestrates every single
Yeah.
thing, but we know that that's not true. God gave us free will.
Yeah, God gave us free will.
Yeah.
Except maybe for this one thing. Really, though, this line, I think, is basically just saying Roman rulers are in charge because God has allowed it. I think that's all they're trying to get across with that line.
Right.
From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free, but the Jewish leaders kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." They all shouted that together, I guess. When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down at the judge's seat at a place known as the Stone Pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about noon, which is an important thing to note. So John is saying at this point it's noon
Okay.
on Friday. This would be
On Good Friday.
yeah. "Here is your king," Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, "Take him away! Take him away! Crucify him!" "Shall I crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," the chief priests answered, which would probably piss off Herod. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. And Luke didn't seem to think this was relevant because he doesn't have a version of this. at
Okay.
all. That's the beating. So that's the whipping and everything, was him getting flogged and all that stuff.
Oh, and getting it's the whole idea of these Roman soldiers like stripping him down, putting a robe on him, putting some crown of thorns on him,
Yeah.
being like, "All hail the king!" Smack.
Yeah.
"All hail the king!" Smack, and then
taking
off the robe, putting his little
clothes back
loincloth back on,
yeah,
and then taking him outside and being like, here's your king. For somebody that you don't find any reason to kill or anything like that, like, I'm not even sure what he thinks he needs to punish him for, because he's not finding any reason for, but what crimes does he need to be punished for? They don't even really lay that out. He must think
for claiming to be the Messiah.
Yeah, but he's Roman.
Romans don't believe in the Messiah. Right. So why does that matter to them? Yeah, because I guess because that means he's king of the Jews, and so he's claiming to be. At the end of the day, like he doesn't really have any reason.
No, he has. Pilate has no skin in this game,
right?
Other than like maybe some Jewish people will be mad at him, but it's my understanding that the Jewish people didn't want Romans there in the first place.
Right?
Do they really think that we'll be able to go to Rome and tell Caesar that Pontius Pilate did a bad job, and Caesar's not going to be like, I fucking care what you peasants think.
Yeah.
Like, they think they're even going to be able to get to Caesar.
Right.
Like, that threat seems empty to me. Like, literally the thing stopping Pontius Pilate is they're like, we're going to tell Caesar on you. And Pontius Pilate is like, I don't fucking care. Do what you need to do.
Yeah. The crucifixion.
Oh, man. That happens on Good Friday, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the best Friday.
It's the best Friday.
Yeah.
Such a fucking weird thing.
Yeah.
Christianity's so weird.
So this is Mark 15, 21 through 32, Luke 23, 26 through 43, Matthew 27, 32 through 44, and John 19, 28 through 37. First, we're going to talk about Luke's version. As the soldiers led him away, they seized Simon of Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country, and they put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. Jesus turned and said to them, "Where the fuck were you when I needed you?" Everybody was shouting for Barabbas.
Yeah. Right. And now all of a sudden you guys are crying. This is the Jesus story we need, right? The one where he's like, "What the fuck, guys?"
Yeah.
Like a moment ago, you were all like, "Crucify him," and now you're like, "Oh, they're gonna crucify him."
Yeah. What the fuck did you think was gonna happen? Just like Judas. Jesus.
I don't know that I want to die for your sins anymore.
Yeah.
You guys are idiots.
But that's not what he said. He turned to them and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the childless women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if people do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?" And that's all like references to, other verses in the Old Testament and shit. 2 other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there, along with the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Or as we more commonly hear it, "Forgive them, they know not what they do."
Right.
And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. So the Roman soldiers took his clothes and they divided them up, which I can't imagine these are in good condition at this point.
Yeah.
After all the beatings he's gone through.
Yeah.
It's going to be blood covered and all that stuff.
He cried. He sweated blood.
Yeah.
Not too much long before that.
Just a few hours before.
Yeah.
The people.
That's where the Shroud of Turin comes from.
That was the burial.
The burial one.
Cloth that they put over him.
Okay.
Is the idea behind
it's like
that.
just the towel he wiped his blood sweat off with.
Yeah, which has been thoroughly debunked.
Yes,
but
of course.
The people stood watching as the rulers even sneered at him. They said, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above him which read, "This is the king of the Jews." One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. Which is interesting because that means you don't get resurrected or,
right.
you know.
They haven't talked about resurrection, though, have they?
No, like there's just that one story we talked about a few episodes ago where we got into the idea of resurrection,
right.
the great resurrection, and where the idea of heaven and going straight to heaven comes from. So that's Luke's version of the crucifixion, right?
Okay.
Mark, and only Mark, tells us that Simon of Cyrene is the father of Alexander and Rufus. What the fuck does that mean? Well, according to Wikipedia, they have a whole article for Simon of Cyrene. Cyrene is a city located in northern Africa on the eastern side of Libya, or it was. It was a Greek city in the province of Cyrenaica. It had a Jewish community where 100,000 Judean Jews had been forced to settle during the reign of Ptolemy Sultan. It was around 300 BC.
Okay.
And was an early center of Christianity, which is an important part. When Mark identifies Simon as the father of Alexander and Rufus, tradition states that they became missionaries, Alexander and Rufus. The inclusion of their names may suggest that they were of some standing in the early Christian community at Rome. It also has been suggested that the Rufus mentioned by Paul in Romans is the son of Simon of Cyrene. Some also link Simon himself with the, quote, men of Cyrene, unquote, who preached the gospel to the Greeks in Acts. On the other hand, Simon's name alone does not prove he was Jewish, and Alexander and Rufus were both common names and may have referred to others. Clearly, it's kind of similar to the Barabbas thing and Romans with Pilate and everything. Like, it's early church stuff. It's
right.
early church
setting
politics
up like
that
this,
they set up.
This leader of our current church is related to the dude that carried the cross for Jesus.
Yeah, it's setting up authority to certain people.
Right.
You know?
But he didn't sound like he willingly carried the cross. They were just like, hey, you over there, you look strong, come carry this cross.
Right.
And I feel like I want to let you finish whatever the remainder of the story is, but I 100% was under the impression that Jesus was made to carry his own cross.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the Bible's perfect and there are no contradictions.
So is that okay? So I guess carry on.
Yeah. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha.
Oh, yeah.
Which means the place of the skull.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, that's where a shit demon is created.
Yeah. Golgotha.
Yeah.
Because of all, when you die, you evacuate your bowels.
Right.
Right. So there was just tons of shit because this is where they would crucify everybody.
Yeah.
And therefore you get the Golgotha.
Yeah. Giant rubber poop monsters. If anybody's interested, there's a great documentary out there called Dogma. a documentary that was heavily protested by the Catholic Church.
It was so much so that religious people threw rocks through Kevin Smith's house, his windows, and literally almost hit his newborn child.
Yeah, because that's what Jesus would do.
Right.
Mark says that they offer Jesus wine mixed with myrrh, but he doesn't take it. Matthew says it was wine mixed with gall. I have no idea what this is. But after tasting it, he refused to drink it. So little differences there. I've heard that the reason for this is because he didn't want his senses dulled, but they don't call that out. And also, I feel like in other versions, he does drink the wine. Different, like the tiny little differences in it. Like they all have this element of him being given wine vinegar, but they all kind of do their own thing with it. It's just really fascinating.
Well, and who would say yes to wine vinegar?
Who would say yes to it?
Yeah.
If you were really thirsty, I guess. I don't know.
No. Wine vinegar. Would you just drink vinegar if you were thirsty?
I don't know.
No.
Yeah.
The answer to that is no, you would not. It's disgusting. You would throw up.
Yeah. I don't understand why that's what they give him, but
it's spoiled wine. It's an insult. You know, if you know that he once turned water into wine, why not give him the spoiled version of that?
Maybe he can turn it into water.
You know, I mean, it sounds like they're just doing a lot of like taunting.
Yeah.
So the wine vinegar to me seems like just like another taunt.
Well, yeah, but then there's like another version of this where it sounds like they're doing it as a nice thing for him. You know, but anyway, we'll get into it. At this point, they crucify him and divide up his clothes. We're told it's 9 a.m.
Okay.
And remember that John said it was noon when they were beating him.
Right.
But in this version, which I think we're on Matthew and Mark, in these two versions, they're saying it's 9 a.m. when he's already being crucified. There's a sign above him saying King of the Jews, according to Mark, and this is Jesus, the King of the Jews, according to Matthew. 2 rebels were crucified on either side of him. People passing by hurl insults at him.
Oh, they're called rebels in this and not criminals.
Yeah. Like, I kind of wonder if these are also insurrectionists.
Yeah.
Yeah. People passing by hurl insults at him, and the chief priests mock him. The rebels crucified with him also mock him. Luke's is the only version where there's one of them that's like trying to get on his good side,
right?
For salvation.
Yeah.
John's version of this. So the soldiers took charge of Jesus, carrying his own cross. He went out to the place of the skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on each side, and Jesus in the middle. Pilate had a notice prepared and fastened to the cross. It read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Many of the Jews read the sign, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the sign was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. The chief priests of the Jews protested to Pilate, do not write the King of the Jews, but that this man claimed to be the King of the Jews. Pilate answered, what I have written, I have written.
Yeah, he's like, fuck you guys. I'm doing this because you asked me to.
Yeah.
Also, did you not see the quotes?
Right. But really this is saying like he believes that he really is the King of the Jews and all that stuff. And yet he's still doing this, but it's full of this shit where it's like they mysteriously seem to believe,
Yeah.
When the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes, dividing them into 4 shares, one for each of them, with the undergarment remaining. This garment was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. They get very weirdly specific about this. Let's not tear it, they said to one another. Let's decide by lot who will get it. This happened that the scripture might be fulfilled that said, they divided my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment. I didn't bother looking this prophecy up because fuck these prophecies.
What a weird thing to prophesize anyway.
Yeah.
Like, just sounds like a will.
Yeah.
Like reading somebody's will.
Right. Yeah. But this explains why they put the clothes back on him, right? Like the whole point of why they wrote this so that they, took off the clothes to put on that purple robe, but then they put it back on him.
So that they could take it later?
So that they could take the clothes later.
How much clothes is he wearing?
I don't know. They apparently enough to equally divide it among 4 people.
Well, and they said they left the undergarment.
Yeah.
Which is the little skirt.
Well, they took it. Yeah.
Oh, so he's naked.
Yes, he is naked on the cross.
Well, crucifix have lied to me my entire life.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen a dick in church.
Right.
And if he was naked on the cross.
Well, you're lucky.
It's terrible. But why isn't he naked on the cross?
Because it's more important to not show penises than to be accurate with that depiction.
Well, that's crazy to me.
It's totally fucking nuts.
It's a terrible thing to be happening. Like if this were a true story, this is a terrible thing to be happening. And it's infinitely more like humiliating to also be naked on the cross.
Yeah.
Right. But they've covered him to give him I don't know, a modicum of fucking.
They don't want the nuns masturbating to Jesus. That's the thing. That's what they want. They don't want people seeing the dick and getting sexual.
Let me be very clear. Women don't masturbate at the sight of penises. That's not a thing. Just like women don't have abortions as a form of birth control, women don't also masturbate at the sight of penises.
Right.
That is primarily a dude thing, not being able to control themselves at the sight of nudity.
We really need to have mandatory women's studies, I think, in high schools. Shit.
Women just aren't going around rubbing their clits at the sight of any fucking penis.
Yeah.
It's just not a thing. It's just not a thing.
No. Yeah. So
if anything, they were trying to stop, a boon in homosexuality more than they were worried about nuns masturbating.
Right. I know. It's more likely, as we found out, that the priest would have been masturbating to it.
Yes. Anyway, but now I'm angry
I know.
because I want a necklace that has a naked Jesus on it.
Right.
Not all the ones I've been given my entire life with his
I
little
bet
skirt.
somebody out there makes them.
I'm sure they do.
You know, near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas. And I don't know if it's like stood his mother's sister, and Mary, the wife of Clopas.
Or her sister's name is Mary.
Also
I
Mary.
didn't know Mary had a sister.
I think this is the only time she's mentioned. And Mary Magdalene. So it's like 3 Marys right there.
Right. At least 3 Marys.
At least 3 Marys, yeah.
Yes.
When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother."
Oh, he gave John to his mom. This is John, right?
That's the idea.
Because he often whoever wrote this often refers to John.
This is the John Gospel,
disciple that
so
Jesus
everybody
loves
traditionally
most.
thinks it's
Yeah.
John that he's talking about. In theory, this is saying, "John, please take care of my mom."
Right.
From that time on, the disciple took her into his home. But then you have to point out the fact that Mary Magdalene was there. And, there's also the theory that Mary Magdalene was the disciple whom he loved. And so it might have been that he was having Mary take care of his mom, Mary taking care of Mary. Either way, none of these people existed.
No.
The death of Jesus.
Okay.
So this is Mark 15, 33 through 41, Luke 23, 44 through 49, Matthew 27, 45 through 56, and John 19, 28 through 37. Mark and Matthew's versions, from noon until 3 p.m., there's darkness over all the land. And at 3 p.m., Jesus cries out in translated text, my God, why have you forsaken me?" People standing around think he's calling Elijah. Someone fills a sponge with wine vinegar, puts it on a staff, and offers it to Jesus. It doesn't say whether he drinks or not, but then they say, "No, leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down." Jesus gives a loud cry and dies. Mark, at this point, says, "The curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. And when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, 'Surely this man was the Son of God.'" So the Roman soldier just sees
him die,
and it's like, surely this man is the Son of God.
It seems, well, maybe the inference is that Jesus called out to his dad and said, "Why have you forsaken me? Like, why is it taking so long?" Kind of thing. Like, why am I, like, fucking get it over with sort of thing. And then he died. So maybe like that whole thing was like, well, he asked God to kill him and then he died. So therefore he's the Son of God.
Yeah.
Or like the curtain. So the curtain of the temple
gets torn.
Torn. Like a ghost tore it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not like people didn't tear it. It just tore.
It just, apparently it just tears.
And then where is the temple in relation to?
It's all the way inside the city. That's one of my grievances with this.
Yeah.
There's no way they would have seen that.
Right.
From where they were.
Somebody was like, "Oh yeah, what time did Jesus die?" Oh yeah, no, I'm making him Canadian.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the curtain.
Oh, yeah.
The curtain did tear then.
Yeah.
Nobody touched it that I saw.
What do you think this was all about? Nothing incredible about how he dies in this version, but this guy is just like, surely this man is the Son of God. Whereas in Matthew's version, at that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. The earth shook. The rocks split and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection. So this is a little bit later, after Jesus' spoilers, after Jesus' resurrection, and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God."
So
this at least gives you a little bit more like, okay, they had a little bit more to go off
because
of,
people came back to life.
Yeah, but not right then.
when he was resurrected,
Yeah.
they also came back
So
to
in
life.
3 days.
But the way you read it made it sound like they were brought, like the tombs cracked open
Yeah.
and people were brought back to life, but they didn't come out until he was resurrected.
Right. It's
So
3
they're
more
just-
days.
They're just resurrected, but still hanging out
Yeah.
inside the tomb.
This is something that I feel like no Christians ever talk about.
I have never heard this before in my life.
That when Jesus gets resurrected,
Other
it's not
people.
other people got resurrected
Yeah.
too. A bunch of other people, holy people.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not a part of the story that
And
I've
people
ever
saw
heard.
them,
Right.
but we don't get any of that
I feel
story.
like it's not in the stations.
No. That there was a zombie apocalypse.
Right. Yes. And other people,
Yeah.
some other people saw them.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing to point out. Like, not everybody saw them.
Yeah.
Some other people saw
Yeah.
them.
So therefore, you should believe it.
Right.
Because we're telling you, other people saw
Yeah.
them.
Some.
Yeah. Some. Yeah.
Not all other people.
Well, what were those interactions like? Who exactly was raised from the dead? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
And who was raised, and how would the people they interacted with know that that was a person?
That was the person who
right.
Yeah.
Because they just wandered into the city and they're like, hey, I'm that holy man that was dead and now I'm alive. And they're like, oh, wow.
Did they?
That's cool.
Yeah. And then also, like, did they have to then die again at some point?
Right. Did they go through the whole cycle?
Were they just
cycle?
back? Yeah. Were they just back alive for a while? Like, but yeah, no, this really happened. So yeah, the women get a notable mention here that they were watching from a distance. Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. She doesn't actually get a name. So I think we should just pick a random one for her. Like, I don't know,
Susan.
Mary.
Oh.
Just give her another Mary. Because I don't know if that's who they were talking about in the other version too.
Who's Zebedee again?
Zebedee is the father of the sons of thunder.
Oh, that's right. So this is the mother of Zebedee's son?
She's the mother of the sons of thunder. She's the wife of thunder.
What a weird way to put it.
Or she's the thunder.
She's the mother of Zebedee's sons.
Yeah.
Why isn't she just Zebedee's wife?
Yeah. Why isn't she just Mary. or Karen or whatever her fucking name is?
Right. It's just a weird thing to refer to her as the mother of Zebedee's sons, which makes me think she's probably like a servant.
Yeah.
And not actually his wife.
Maybe. Yeah. All right. Luke's version. Darkness from noon to 3 p.m.
Yep.
Right. And this time we actually get like, quote, for the sun stopped shining. So I don't know if that's cloud cover or like an eclipse.
An eclipse, yeah.
A very long eclipse. At this point, just before Jesus dies, the curtain of the temple tears in two.
Okay.
So it's even before he dies. Then we get Jesus called out with a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Just like the song from System of a Down. Right, Chop Suey.
Oh.
Father, into your hands I commit my spirit.
Oh, does he sing that in there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Why have you forsaken me?
Oh my gosh. I completely forgot the lyrics to that song.
Yeah. I think
as soon as I hear this. Because they're hard to understand. But
as soon as I read this, I'm like, why was he quoting?
Why is he quoting System of a Down?
It's like, oh, wait, no. That went the other way.
Yeah.
So yeah, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. When he had said this, he breathed his last.
Okay.
The centurion, seeing what had happened, praised God and said, surely this was a righteous man.
Oh, okay.
When all the people who had gathered to witness this sight saw what took place, they beat their breasts and went away. But all those who knew him, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things. And again, though, like this is another instance where it's like the only thing to really be amazed about is that the temple curtain tore in two.
Well, and he wasn't, to me, that sounds like the Roman centurion noticed that up until the very last minute of his life, he was
faithful to God.
Faithful to his dad or God.
His God.
Yeah. Which then justifies like this surely was a righteous man.
Maybe.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that,
if that's what he was reacting to, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. John's version goes like this. Later, knowing that everything had now been finished, and so the scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, I am thirsty. A jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on a stalk of hyssop plant, and lifted it to Jesus' lips. When he received the drink, Jesus said, "It is finished." With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Now it was the day of preparation, and the next day was to be a special Sabbath. Because the Jewish leaders did not want the bodies left on the crosses during the Sabbath, they asked Pilate to have the legs broken and the bodies taken down. The soldiers therefore came and broke the legs of the first man who had been crucified with Jesus, and then those of the other. But when they came to Jesus, they found he was already dead. They did not break his legs.
Oh, I see. They were going to break the legs of the people who were still alive.
Yes.
I see. I was like, why would they break dead people's legs?
Yeah, so they die faster.
But he was already dead.
Which is like, well, then why don't you just fucking knock a nail into their head or something?
Right.
Just kill them, but whatever.
Torture.
Let's do this.
Torture.
Yeah, let's do this the horrific way. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing
the spear of destiny.
The spear of destiny. See, all of this, like the holy relics and shit, it's all from John for the most part.
Wow.
Like John really knew how to like create these little relics.
He knew how to make things, so he knew how to write a story so that things could be
merchandised.
Yes. Or create the Catholic. Like John is responsible for the creation of the Catholic Church. He has to be, because
it's way Catholic.
Yes, 100%. Because out of all the Christian religions, Catholicism is seems to be the most interested in like all the bits and baubles related to religion, and they fucking hoard them.
Yeah.
If there was a spear of destiny, it's in the basement of the Vatican, those sort of things.
Right. So they don't break his legs. Instead, the soldier pierces the side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. The man who saw it has given testimony, and his testimony is true. He knows that he tells the truth, and he testifies so that you may also believe.
That was put into the Bible?
Yes.
Oops. All right.
Therefore, there's no questioning it.
Right. That's so
There's
funny
no
that
questioning
the need was felt to put that in there.
Yeah. These things happen so that the scripture would be fulfilled. Not one of his bones will be broken. And as another scripture says, they will look on the one they have pierced. So that's the death of Jesus.
So there's still
more gospel. Yeah, we've got one. We likely only have one episode
because we have to get to the resurrection.
Right.
I thought Mary washed his feet when he was on the crucifix.
No. Not that I recall at all.
I really remember like that being a thing that I learned, where like she's the one who gave him the water,
Mary Magdalene,
and also washed his feet. Does she wash his? I know we talked about his feet getting washed
with the oil,
but
with her nards.
Yeah. But after he's taken down and like they prepare his body to be put in the tomb, does she help prepare his body?
To be honest, I have not read ahead too much on this so far.
I don't know. It's crazy. I might have created like a false narrative in my head because I don't care.
I don't, that's not something that normally happens with this stuff.
Like, a false narrative?
Yeah, people don't conflate these stories at all normally.
And to be fair, the brief time that I spent in any church, like I wasn't really fucking paying attention.
No, but you're not like, it's not far-fetched for you to think that stuff, because like I feel like I remember hearing that Mary is the one who gave him the wine vinegar and everything and the sponge, but that's not what's called out. So that's stuff people just throw in there.
Gotcha.
And I'm sure so much of that comes from trying to make movies out of this stuff.
Right.
And you can't like, there's no specifics to a lot of this stuff. Right. So people will, for cinematic reasons, make decisions like that. Like, oh yeah, it was Mary Magdalene who gave him the wine vinegar. And then that becomes the story we all tell ourselves because we like that detail,
right. Yeah, I don't know. And maybe it was because there is a Book of Mary.
Right.
That's out there, right?
There is a Book of Mary that is out there, but is not canon.
Right. Canon. Whilst women have been kind of in history, like pushed down and not given any power, somewhere along the way, somebody realized if you want something to catch on and stick, you have to get the women on board.
Yeah.
Whether they have power or not, they at least have to buy in, because if you can't get the women to buy in, they're not going to teach their children. And
Right.
you can't build that hierarchy of belief. You have to get women on board.
Right.
And one way to do that is to create something around a woman and give a woman more power than she was actually
Give them
given.
some representation.
Yeah. And so Catholicism does that with saints and with Mary, right? You pray to Mary on your rosary, right? When you go to confession, they tell you how many Hail Marys to do. There's whole churches that are around Mary. A lot of visions that people have are of Mary, right? There's the women in Mexico that all had like the mass sort of vision of Mary on the hill, those sort of things.
My impression of the Catholic Church has always been that they worship Mary more than they even do Jesus.
Yes, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
the idolatry of her is definitely greater.
Yeah.
I feel like, because whenever you see Jesus in the Catholic Church, 100%, it's like during his death. Like the crucifix is a huge symbol, and a lot of Christianity, but Catholicism really leans into it. The little necklace that you wear is Jesus on a crucifix in the front of churches and your fucking stained glass windows. It's not like Jesus rolling around with the disciples or turning water into wine or anything like that. It's literally just him marching to his death most of the time. And Mary's always put in this very like angelic light. I mean, except for there's even one in one of the books where she straight up is like, we got to stage an intervention with this dude.
Yeah. In the one, I think it was in Mark. It was definitely in a gospel. One of the gospels that didn't have a nativity story.
Right.
Where she thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
But they've created this whole idea around her being just as holy.
Right.
Just God decided to put her baby in her.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Depending on which gospel you read.
Right.
Next time on BSFA.
Is this truly the end for our masquerading Messiah? Will Barabbas get a job at the Dairy Queen despite a conviction on his record? Will the rooster crow a third time? All these questions will be answered and more in the next episode of Bible Stories for Atheists.
Anyway, yeah.
Well, that was fun. Yeah. I'm so glad that everyone got to hear that, but also I got to see your face the whole time.
Yeah. And you're like, and I'm sorry to say I had to see your face the whole time.
Prepare thyself for a message from
God.
Prepare thyself for a message from
God.
Prepare thyself for a message from
Yeah, are you there, God? It's me. Okay, good. Yeah, I guess thanks for the call back, but we need to talk. No. Satan told us you can talk clearly. No more of this woo-woo bullshit.
Damn it. That asshole's always ruining my fun. What do you want?
What do I want? I want to know what the fuck you're doing right now. I want to know what the fuck you're doing about the nut jobs acting like they speak for you. That's what the fuck I want.
Hey, don't blame me for people's shitty behavior. If you don't like it, you do something about it.
They say that you are fine with abandoning people who are desperate. They say you want children who terminate a pregnancy to be imprisoned for life or even get the death penalty. Is that who you are? Because that is not who I was raised to believe you were.
As the great modern American poet Marshall Mathers says, I am whatever you say I am.
What is that supposed to mean?
I am whatever you want me to be. Some say I would imprison children who terminate a pregnancy, that I would condemn to death those who would love people with the same sex organs, that I will gladly destroy those who do not follow me correctly and end this wretched world that I perfectly created. I I am whatever you want me to be. Some say I love every one of you, that I would never condemn a single one of you simply for trying to find happiness in this life. That I work in mysterious ways, and it can be difficult to see my plan. I am whatever you want me to be. You say I don't exist. I am whatever you want me to be. I am that I am.
Then what is the point of you? When your ways become so mysterious, so imperceptible, there is no difference between if you exist or if you don't. So, if you exist, it's time to get off of your lazy fucking ass and rain some wrath down on the blasphemers taking your name in vain. They take beliefs from an ancient culture, wipe their ass with it, and force our faces into the mess. And they have the shriveled old testes to say anyone who disagrees is disrespecting their religion. You are whatever they say you are. They have made you angry, calloused, and greedy. They have turned your face from the meek, the poor, and the oppressed. They have made you in their image. And what I want is to know what the fuck you're going to do about it. Are you still there?
Thank you for calling.
God.
Oh, God damn it. All right, so I guess we're not going to be able to get our grievances addressed by the Almighty.
Well, I mean, he did say whatever we think he is. She? He?
It. They. God is non-binary. Much to the chagrin of most of his followers.
Right.
God would not actually have a gender.
No.
I don't
true.
think. Do they think that God has a penis?
Well, he did get Mary pregnant.
He did. Yeah.
So therefore, yes.
Did he use the penis?
I mean,
if that's the case, then she's not a virgin.
it's true.
You know?
Yeah.
Is that what the Holy Spirit is?
Oh.
Is the Holy Spirit God's penis?
Oh.
That's going to piss off some Christians. I don't care, though, because you overturned fucking Roe v. Wade.
Right.
So, yeah. I'm a little pissed about it. Like, I'm a little...
You're a little pissed about it.
I know. And
You're a little pissed about it.
I know. I know. And I'm not even the people who had their rights taken away. But just as somebody who used to be a Christian,
yeah,
it pisses me off when this shit is so misinterpreted and misused.
At the end of the day, like I believe people should be able to believe what they want until it affects me. And guess what? It's fucking affected me.
Yeah.
So you don't get to believe whatever you want anymore. If you want to battle, if you want a religious war, you're starting one.
Right.
It's not me. It's not the non-believers who are starting the religious war.
Mm-hmm. I do want to call out, if you are looking to help out Planned Parenthood, they do have a defense action fund that you can reach out to, that you can donate to. That's what personally I'm doing. I'm donating to Planned Parenthood right now, and I'm donating to a few women who are running for office in our area. that are pro-choice, and that's how I'm kind of fighting this, and I'm helping out their campaigns. At least I'm planning to go knock some doors for candidates. So I would highly encourage you, if you're in the U.S., to do the same, to try and fight back against this.
Yes, if you are not in the U.S., please don't donate to any candidates, because that is completely illegal.
Yeah.
You could also go to abortionfunds.org. That is not directly related to Planned Parenthood, but will direct you towards the network of abortion funds, so that money gets, like, if you're in Michigan, then the money gets kind of funneled towards abortion funds in the state that you're in. If you can keep your money even more local, do what Josh says and donate to local candidates who you know align with your beliefs, and donate to local clinics. We have one here in Grand Rapids that famously constantly has protesters out in front of it. Go out and stand next to them and hold up signs about how hypocritical they are.
Right.
That would be nice. Stop giving people quarter, right? Like, don't let my moms of the world say things like, I believe in pro-choice, except.
Right.
Because that's not okay. You can't leave those doors open.
Can't be quiet about it.
Either you believe that it's okay or you don't. None of this in between bullshit. I've spent a long time being quiet about my atheism because I don't want to hurt the people around me. But fucking A, man, they don't fucking care. They don't care. The amount of effort I've put into not insulting religious people is insane to me. Knowing now that they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care about me. Not really. Not at the end of the day.
And even the people who are a little bit more in the middle about all of it, don't realize how much they're supporting these people.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about how right now we have an issue where a bunch of people are taking a drug called Christianity. And they are strung out on it. Mm-hmm. They absolutely are dependent on it. And there's a bunch of people who are taking it recreationally who are saying, hey, it's not that bad.
Right.
But it is.
For
It's
some
a
people,
real
it
fucking
is.
problem.
Yeah.
And you guys need to fucking sober up and help us fucking deal with this problem.
Right.
It's time we all sobered up and realized that this drug so many of us were raised on is actually hurting us.
Right.
And we need to do something about
Sitting on the sidelines and being passively Christian.
Yeah.
You're not helping.
No.
So all the Christians out there who are like, yeah, but that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
Except that you're letting the people around you behave that way.
Yeah. You're making it seem like it's fine to just choose to ignore reality.
Right.
And choose your own reality in it. And it's not okay to do that.
Right.
And on that happy note, they all lived miserably ever after. I don't know. Maybe we should wrap that up in a better way.
I mean, I feel like that's true now more than ever. So
yeah.
They're making us all live miserably ever after.
And we all lived miserably ever after. Thank you so much for checking out our podcast. Help us share the good news by sending this to a friend or leaving a review to help others find us. And if you want to support us with a donation, you can do that on our website at bsfa.cc. Checking the levels.
The Human Torch was denied a bank loan.